Monday, March 4th, 2024. Administrator Chansky, call the roll.
Ball.
Present.
Jensen.
Present.
Maroney.
Present.
Scott.
Present.
And Zierden.
Present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will move on. Approval or amendment of the agenda.
Yeah, I've got a couple of requests. I would ask for the opportunity to provide clarification on the consent agenda item, which would be 8B. And then I would ask for
Councilmember Scott, can you clear? You said 8B or E?
8B.
8B, thank you.
And then I would also ask for resolution 8E to be pulled off the consent agenda.
Do we want to motion those individually? Or are you motioning that together? I would say individually is probably the best thing to do.
So I'll make a motion to remove consent agenda item 8E. And I believe that would become then
9A.
9A.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
None for me.
Have anything? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The other item I had was just a point of clarification on the February 20 special city council meeting minutes. I don't know if we want to get into that right now or if we want to wait for the consent agenda approval.
Normally, I guess, do we need to modify, if we're not approving the consent agenda right now, but we can always remove an item from consent agenda when it comes time for a consent agenda, or is now the actual time to remove
Now would
it?
be the good time, if you want to remove an item for discussion, now would be a good time to do that.
So due to that, I'd probably say you're making a motion to remove item 8B for discussion purposes.
I will make a motion to remove item 8B off the consent agenda for discussion.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will go ahead and move on to open forum.
Madam Mayor,
sorry.
now you need a motion to approve the
I'm sorry.
agenda as adopted.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second. You can have it.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we will then move on to open forum. I would ask that tonight we keep it to items not on the agenda. So anything with disc golf, City Hall, or other items on here. So if anyone has anything that is not currently on the agenda, please come forward and state your name and address.
Bill Toff, 31877 Green Scene Drive. I'll be very brief, and I'll get to the point here shortly. I've coached youth sports basketball for 35 years at various levels, and I was part of 3 varsity programs. And I would have parents come up to me on occasion and say, why did the varsity coach do that? Why didn't he take that time out? Why did he put that defense on? And my canned response was always that our coach wants to win, and he has forgotten more basketball than I know. And so I just think that you all are a team up there, and that it's bad form for you guys to criticize each other, in my opinion, and it's very divisive. In closing, I just want to thank Councilman Scott and also Jensen for watching out for us taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. We'll go ahead and move on to presentations. Declaring the March as food share.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I made the request to Administrator Chansky to, if it was possible, to declare March, Food Share Month for the city of Breezy Point. I volunteer at the food shelf. There is great need within our community. David explained there was a process to do that. I had talked to the mayor about it and looking for, the council's support on this issue. I don't know if everybody's reviewed the packet, but there was an excellent letter from Tammy Larson, who is the director of the food shelf. The one sentence pretty much sums it up. The Lakes Area Food Shelf has seen a 54% increase in food shelf visits and a 39% increase in households served January 2024 versus January 2023. So if residents are able to give, the city will have boxes set up in the entryway starting Wednesday. I have offered, as I did last December when we had a drive, I will deliver the food to the food shelf and just ask for the community support. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the proclamation declaring March as Food Share Month in the city of Breezy Point.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So I will move on to a presentation for First Children's Finance. I welcome up Candace Segla. So one of the things that, was a part of the discussion earlier on was childcare. And one of the things that, people had talked about is, okay, well, how is that going to work in a building like this? And so I invited Candace to come up, along with Shelley back here, to give a presentation on what they do and how they work with cities and private entities to make it profitable for owners of buildings that childcare would be in. So.
Thank you so much for inviting us here today. My name is Candace Segla, and I am the Business Development Manager for First Children's Finance. I serve the eastern side of Minnesota, and I brought with me also today Shelley Coons. She is a Business Development Specialist for Central Minnesota, so she works directly with child care providers in this region of the state. We were asked to join your meeting today to provide your group with some high-level information regarding the child care industry and also to share with you some possible solutions that sometimes local communities utilize when approaching the need for increased child care capacity. When communities have vacant facilities, they sometimes explore utilizing those facilities to add additional child care capacity. But first, who is First Children's Finance? You can progress this slide. First Children's Finance, our mission is to increase the supply and business sustainability of excellent child care. We were founded in 1991 as a community development financial institution. In 2006, became a national nonprofit organization. In 2008, we expanded to Michigan and Iowa, and today we continue to grow. 2023, we opened an office also in Vermont. First Children's Finance work is conducted on three basic levels: the individual business level, level, the community level, and also the systems level. The business level is where Shelley comes alongside all the providers in your area to provide them with training and consultation services regarding the business side of childcare. The community level is where we go into communities who are facing childcare shortages to help them creatively think of ways in which to use their spaces, their resources, or to ban efforts in order to increase childcare capacity. And the systems level is where we work to change public systems through our advocacy and expertise by elevating childcare in policies, practices, fundings, and plans. Next slide. First Children's Finance works with communities that are exploring utilizing local resources and right-sized solutions. We pair that with innovation, meaning the creative ideas that you have on a local level, in order to reach a sustainable childcare supply, meaning we want childcare providers in this industry to be sustainable. That is the main focus of the work that we do. Next slide. So the question becomes then, what type of childcare operations exist for adding capacity? So I'm just going to very quickly touch on some of the options that can be utilized for childcare building efforts. Next slide. Childcare centers are one option. Childcare centers are organized under what is called Rule 3 and licensed at the state level by the Department of Human Services. Licensing regulates a lot of different things within childcare, some of which are the square footage, the size of the space that can be used, what must be available, how much space per child must be used, the placement and makeup of outdoor play space and equipment, the placement, all the way to the placement of sinks and toilets within the facility. It's a highly regulated industry. There are multiple regulating agencies that are used for childcare licensing for centers. The Department of Human Services, the CACFP, they regulate the food program. The fire marshal gets involved with spaces at times, and local zoning ordinances also play a role in what spaces can be used or how they can be used. In centers, children are typically divided into separate classrooms by age category, similar to that of a grade school. Classrooms must maintain staffing requirements and staff-to-child ratios as defined by the Department of Human Services rules and regulations. The bare minimum of center staff qualifications are more extensive than any other form of childcare licensing or certification. I always like to, next slide please, I always like to show a little bit of a performance model. We do some performance models to show communities the profitability of childcare. This model that we created assumes a child care center in what is called a price cluster 2, utilizing the 75th percentile market rates. Now, because of today's time, I don't have an opportunity to share with you how market rates truly work. But for the case of understanding how our model was utilized, Crow Wing County is also in a price cluster 2. So you have a similar price cluster to what was modeled here. For this program, we modeled startup costs at $200,000. That would be for, in a child care center, things like furnishing and equipment to get rooms ready. Those costs were figured into the model at a 30-year loan. And that does not include the cost for a child care center to be renovated or constructing a new building. For this particular model, we figured a monthly rent of $1,500. For child care center wages in this model, we ranged those from $14 to $18 an hour, with the director making $21 an hour. This program is licensed to serve 57 children, but when First Children's Finance models, we model at 85% of licensed capacity, because for child care, children age in and out of rooms at various times, and they must maintain their ratios and age categories appropriately. Therefore, when we model, we use 85% of licensed capacity. So for this program, we enrolled 49 children. When we ran this model, next click please, we see that a child care center loses $75,975 a year, and in order to break even, it would need to maintain an occupancy level of 106%. Next slide. The cost of delivery for childcare is high. For child care center programs, staffing accounts for 70% of their expenses, facilities 20%, and food at 5% and rising. That does not leave a lot of money left over for programmatic expenses and profitability. Next slide. Family childcare is another option, and that is organized under Rule 2 for licensing of family childcare and group family childcare. Family childcare is licensed through the county instead of the state, like centers. Licensing provides regulation in areas such as processes, negative licensing actions, agency records, caregiver qualifications, license capacity, and also child to adult ratios. Family child care programs can serve a mixed age of children from 6 weeks to 14 or 11 years of age within one space. Providers can serve between 10 and 14 children depending on the class of their license, and you can see those on the slide. I won't be diving into those this afternoon, but it is helpful to note that for programs wishing to serve 14 children, they must employ a full-time helper to gain the additional 2 children. The class of license that is maintained regulates such things as the number of children that can be cared for and the number of adults needed to care for the number of children within each age group. Next slide. We also do some modeling for family childcare. Revenues for this model, again, were based on the market rate, that price cluster 2 for 75th percentile. For this program, we are taking this into context that it would be a 12-child program, but for our modeling, we're enrolling 11 children paying full-time weekly rates. Expenses were based on averages from a sampling of First Children's Finance clients within the previous year. And the average salary, if we take a look, annual revenue for that many children paying full-time weekly rates is $87,840. You take away annual expenses, which were figured based on average, and you come up with an average salary of $53,265. We know that on average, family child care providers report working about 65 hours a week. They're typically open around, well, not typically, but sometimes they report being open 53 hours a week, and they do an additional 12 hours of prep each week. When converted to an hourly wage, providers are making $15.46 before taxes. Next slide. Special family child care licenses regulate a variety of family child care programs, one of which includes licensing for what some of you may have heard referred to as a pod concept program. We recognize that the term pod is not a preferred term used by licensing, so for the terms of this presentation, we'll be referring to these programs as special family child care programs. Licenses for special family child care programs are obtained through the county, just like family child care programs are. If the license holder is the primary child care provider, the program must be located on a residential lot, or the program must meet all zoning and fire marshal requirements if it is located on a commercial lot. Because of the many factors that affect special family child care licensing, First Children's Finance recommends that any communities or clients looking to explore this model be in close conversation with the county licensors, fire marshals, zoning officials early on in the exploration stage. This type of program can be a great solution if a community, organization, or an employer has some available space that they want to use to operate the program, or simply rent it out for a child care business to come in and operate. As long as all licensing rules and regulations to include zoning and fire marshal requirements are met, there is the potential to operate multiple programs under one roof line, in most cases up to 4. There's special statute and regulations talking about that, but that provides some high-level information. Some benefits of special family child care programs, meaning programs that can be located in vacant spaces throughout communities, is that typically you're having lower startup costs than that of a center-based option, which can be extremely beneficial, especially when you saw how much providers can make in this industry. Local resources, program supports, or public and private partnerships can significantly increase this financial sustainability of these programs. So perhaps that includes covering renovation costs or even providing some spaces at low rent and utility costs. That can also further help childcare programs be financially sustainable. Startup materials are lower than that of a center-based program. Typically, they cost between $4,000 and $8,000. These programs allow for adding capacity at a slower rate. Some communities with local spaces may start up one special family childcare program at a time, slowly, to keep up with the need that they have. Local resources and program supports, again, help with those costs that childcare providers incur. Special family childcare programs can also require less staff, and they do require less staff than that of childcare center programs. And a lot of communities are facing staffing challenges, so that is a big benefit of this type of program. These programs can also offer flexibility in how they are run and allow for varied hours. If there's multiple programs under one roof line, each provider could operate their own business individually within their individual program, which would allow them to run the business as they would like. Special family childcare, next slide. Special family childcare programs can be implemented in a variety of ways as long as they meet the requirements. These programs can be operated in non-residential settings. Some ways in which some communities have utilized special family childcare include one community has multiple residentially zoned units owned by the county, licensed and operated independently. In this case, the county would be the landlord. One community has one or more units that are owned by the city and licensed and operated, again, individually. Each provider operates and rents the space from the community. One or more units could be within a school building. Schools can, again, be an owner or a license holder. They could also just be the landlord, again. One or more units within a business, such as an employer or a nursing home, could also operate programs. Again, they can rent the space out and be the landlord, or they can operate and run the program. You can also do it with one or more units owned and operated by a community collaborative. Next slide. From June of 2022 to June of 2023, there was a net loss of 320 family child care providers. However, there was a net gain of 9 special family child care licenses. Special family child care programs can be non-owner occupied, where the provider does not live on site, but it could be a residential setting, or they can be non-residential dwellings or programs located within a non-residential setting. We are seeing an increased interest in communities and programs looking to utilize this type of program as an innovative solution to increase their child care capacity. First Children's Finance has worked with several programs and communities interested in utilizing special family child care programs. Next slide. We are just about done here. So the question becomes, how can First Children's Finance help? First Children's Finance is available to help communities or individuals interested in exploring special family child care. We do services such as financial modeling. So if you're interested in exploring it for your vacant space, we can come in ahead of time and start working out some numbers to see what that is going to look like. If you're going to rent it out, lease it out, how much would you need to charge in order to make it profitable for the provider and also help them sustain their program? Well, we can do all of those things ahead of time. We can look at local rates and see what the provider might have to charge in order to make their business sustainable, because the biggest thing we want as providers to be sustainable in the business. We can also look at architectural renderings and make some recommendations off of that. We do business plans. We've also done RFP consultations. So if you have a space and you want to be the landlord, but you're looking for providers, we can help you create those lease space agreements. And we also do business consultation services specifically for child care providers. So there are providers in your region that need additional assistance with their business acumen. We're here to help. Our services are covered by the Department of Human Services. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation for this evening. My name is Candace. My information is up there, as is Shelley Kuntz's. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Has your organization helped anybody in the Brainerd Lakes area?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
We have done a lot of work throughout the state. We have clients located throughout the state. We've worked with expansion projects. We've worked with special family child care projects, family child care projects. We've done a lot of work within.
Hackensack. You can name Hackensack.
Yeah, we've done some work with some of the local regions here. I can't dive into individual community
understood.
projects, but definitely we've done some work in this area for sure.
And I think one of the biggest things is that, should we vote to build a new city hall, one of the things is what would happen with this building. And with our zip code being the second largest need for childcare, they would be able to help us do financial modeling to make sure that if we could do something with this space, that it would be profitable for the city, but also sustainable for the childcare pods that would be in this building. And that is a free service, like she mentioned. So, and that was something where, why I wanted her to come in and kind of give, because there's a lot of, just the education piece on childcare centers. Obviously, you can see why childcare centers are lacking in our state and country. It's because they're not profitable. And so we see a lot of people who are just not getting access to it. So if we can, as a city, not only make, have revenue from a building that we own, but also provide services to our community that is in need, that's basically, an option. And it's not just cities working with private owners. I had introduced her to a private owner in Pequot who has space, also to the city of Nisswa who has some potential space coming up. So really just looking at not only the city of Breezy, but any other surrounding cities that could potentially help us fill the over 200 children that need childcare in our zip code.
And when we talk communities, if I could just leave you with this final comment. This is an economic development issue. Childcare is not an individual's issue, a parent's issue. It is an employer's issue. It is an employee's issue. It is a parent's issue. It is a community issue. Without childcare, your employers will not have employees. People will not come to your community to live. It is essential, much like housing. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk with you today.
Yes, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we will go ahead and move on to City Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So tonight, what we have before you is included in the packet and we discussed at our meeting on February 5th. It's 3 different concepts regarding City Hall. So at your meeting on February 5th, the council requested to see what would a remodeled and expanded City Hall look like, as well as asked what would a new building with the inclusion of some additional features such as a fitness center and gymnasium also look like. So that's what we have for you tonight. I'll let Lindsay come up and kind of walk you through them. But what we have, so the first concept, we kind of want to walk in order of which they were kind of developed. So concept 1 that you'll see tonight, that's the original mill building. We'll probably go over that one pretty quickly. That's what was presented on January 23rd in detail. If anyone wants to see more of that, again, that video is available through the city's website, just going directly to the city's YouTube page. Concept 2 is that redesigned new building. So we took, with Seth and the design team, took the design for the new building and incorporated a fitness center and an optional gymnasium. And then concept 3 is that remodel and addition of the existing building, also with an optional gymnasium. So in the packet, we've got listed the construction estimates that were provided by High Tech, so our partnership working with High Tech throughout this process as well. Construction estimates for each one, as well as the remaining design fees for each option. So those design fees are what it would cost to do the final construction documents, having those developed, going through the construction design development and bidding process, and then also construction management, having Woodseth on site to also manage the construction project and working with high tech on the actual construction as well. So that's what those design fees are for each project as well. So with that, I'll let Lindsay Creans with Woodseth come up, and Lindsay, you can just give you a walkthrough of each of the 3 concepts we have tonight.
Thank you, Administrator Chansky. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Lindsay Krenz. I'm with Woodseth. I'm here to talk through the design options that are in the packet for tonight. We had a really great introduction, so thank you again for that. We'll start with concept number 1, if we page down a little ways. So we have 2 exhibits for each concept, one showing the concept plan on a site plan overview, which is adjacent in this concept to the existing city hall. And then we do a zoom in of the actual architectural floor plan, just for context, moving forward through the presentation. So this concept was presented January at the January board meeting. So this is concept 1. The facility is a new facility located to the north of the existing city hall. We have a main entry and then 4 quadrants of the building. So an administrative office, council chamber space, community room, and then also a community library, then with all of the building support spaces. As a part of this design, we have some improvements to the existing site, as well as a new constructed connecting drive over to the existing public safety building to the north. So if we look a little bit further on, we've got an enlarged view of the floor plan. So again, this is the floor plan that was presented in January. So concept 1, again, so we have the city administrative offices in the lower left-hand corner. This provides ample open office space for staff, as well as private offices, a staff kind of break room entrance concept, and then also some future growth for the developing community we have here. We have some adjacent meeting spaces, 1 smaller meeting room and 1 larger meeting room that separates the administrative area from the council chambers. So we can see an expanded dais, which is a really nice feature. So everyone here kind of flanking the room would be able to sit at that dais and have the technology that would be appropriate for presenting in that room. On the right-hand side, again, we have a community center room that would comfortably seat 75 to 100 people. We've shown this room in many different configurations to show how it could be used as a community space, a training room, voting on the cusp of tomorrow, so that's in everyone's mind, and how you get people in and circle around and out of the building very safely. And then the lower right-hand corner then is the community library space. Concept 2, if we continue scrolling on, this is a modification to concept 1. So based on the feedback we heard at the work session on, I think it was January 27th, the incorporation of a fitness element into the existing floor plan. So we didn't necessarily want to scrap concept 1. We thought it was a very well put together design. It was very well vetted with our user groups and work sessions, but the need for a fitness component. So as you can see here, the floor plan has modified a little bit, increased slightly in square footage. But essentially what we've done is we've created a separate walkway to that north, or I guess it's the southeast, thank you, corner. So we've got dedicated entrances to that fitness space. If we pan down to look a little bit closer at the floor plan, so for example, we've got the fitness room located here, again, on kind of the upper right-hand quadrant. We dropped in some equipment just for a sense of scale and place, but we would have direct access from the exterior of the building, so the public members could have access to that space, as well as an interior corridor access door. So whoever's using that space would have access to drinking fountains, restrooms, and a family restroom. Another great component of concept 1 and concept 2 is at the top of the page, we have a set of doors going outward to the park. So with this interior kind of door system we have in the main corridor, we can actually lock those doors down, and this facility can be accessible to people in the evenings or on the weekends. So if you're using the park and you need restroom facilities or drinking fountains, or if you're just using the fitness room, that whole kind of upper right-hand quarter of the building would be accessible to folks in that regard. So we also put together a concept for an adjacent gymnasium. So this is the same concept number 2. You can see that fitness center identified, but we kept going eastward. So this could be an alternate option to think about for this floor plan. So this is a full-size gymnasium. So in the gymnasium, we have a competition basketball court, a competition-size volleyball court, and then 3 pickleball courts we've drawn in just for a sense of scale. And then a 10-foot perimeter around that. So for walking purposes, you could have a nice walking space. Included in this is a dedicated entry point. So again, this part of the facility could be operated outside of normal business hours. If City Hall was closed, you would still have access then to the fitness center and the gymnasium building. We've got dedicated restrooms. We have storage, mechanical, janitorial spaces. We even snuck in some dedicated single-use restrooms with showers. So we've got a little bit of a locker room type feel there. And then highlighted in blue is a office. So this would be a dedicated office space that would have some sort of transaction window. So if people are paying membership dues or checking in for events, that space would then add support to that gymnasium. The next slide is just a floor plan overview of what that would look like in a little bit more detail. So you can see there's a really nice clean break line. So that fitness center would still be in the main City Hall facility, and that athletic structure would be separate. So this would be something that we could plan on day 1 to add to the facility. It could be added on as an ad alternate, so we could have an understanding of what those bid numbers would look like on bid day, or we could just plan for future, growth and improvements 5-10 years down the road. So a lot of opportunities there with adding on a gym structure. Concept 3. So the council challenged us with the task of looking at this existing building. When we very, very first started this process a year ago, we looked at this existing facility and the improvements that would be required to bring this facility up to today's standard from code perspective, energy consumption, accessibility, etc. So what we were challenged to do is kind of expand upon that, bring the existing building up to compliance, but also add on some of the amenities that you've seen in Concept 1 and Concept 2. So this is kind of the merging of those concepts. So we can see the existing parking lot on the right-hand side, which is to the south of us here. So we still have this new connecting drive with some additional parking. But what we've done is we've added an addition onto this building to the north. So right behind all of you, we would kind of come through this wall here. So you have a centralized entranceway lobby. So you come in from either the park perspective or the parking lot perspective. We've got access to a secure lobby. So on the left-hand side, we have the city administrative offices. On the right-hand side, we have the existing building, which is the council chambers and some support spaces. And then we have that shared lobby, which would then have public restrooms. We can take a closer look at that on the next plan, which is a floor plan view. So again, we've got that dashed line indicating the existing building and the new building line of demarcation there. So the existing building, we would take advantage of this space that we're in right now. We would rotate the dais. We would provide some emergency exit opportunities, and also a wall very similar to this that can be compartmentalized. So the dais and all of the technology could be secure, while the rest of the space could act as a community room when the council chambers is not in use. We would convert some of the space in the back for support spaces like storage, custodial, and a kitchen space that would be compartmentalized. So again, you could rent the kitchen if you needed it and choose not to if you don't need it. Updating the bathrooms is essential for this existing facility. And then 2 ideas we had for this existing facility is potential expansion of the community library and a small fitness room. So as you can see here, the upper right-hand corner, we dropped in some fitness equipment just for a sense of scale. So if we go to the left, when we start looking at the new addition, so this building, as we all walked in here tonight, is not necessarily on grade. So we have to step up into the building like we do today, but also providing ADA ramps for both of the entrances. So to the west and to the east, which is the park entrance and then the street entrance. So we would ramp up on the exterior of the building and then enter into the vestibule, very similar how we do with your facility here today. Again, the lobby is a secured lobby space, so it could be compartmentalized. So this whole lobby space could be accessible, again, from the park's perspective. So if you wanted to use the restrooms or the drinking fountains, or in the event of inclement weather, you'd have a space to kind of get out of the weather. Men's and women's restrooms, drinking fountains located in this space. To the left, we have a transaction window. So this is a space that could very easily accommodate 2 to 3 different transactions at any given time based on volume and time of year. Very similar to concept 1 and 2. So we have the open office at the core of this new addition. So providing ample opportunity for different cubicle arrangements and future growth of that space. And then the perimeter of the room allows for conference room, meeting room, a dedicated break room space, an employee entrance, and then private offices as well. So we were also tasked with taking a look at concept 3 and what would an athletic structure look in this option. So the last 2 slides we have for you tonight, if we kept scrolling, are adding that same gymnasium concept onto this building. So in the event of adding this on or planning for future, you can see how that same gymnasium, again, competition basketball court, full-size regulation volleyball court, and the 3 pickleball balls, again, for just a sense of scale. We do have a dedicated entrance into this facility as well, or the athletic structure, I should say. So again, this part of the building can be compartmentalized, locked down, so that it could be used for evenings and weekends. We have some, again, dedicated parking out in front of this area, so to increase the amount of occupants, we needed to increase the amount of parking. We've got an entry lobby area, men's and women's restrooms, mechanical janitorial space, and then again, 2 single occupancy toilet rooms that have the shower capabilities, so providing that amenity as well. And then we have the internal link. So if you can see, if we scroll maybe to the next page, Daniel, we've got an internal link. So the employee entrance now becomes the link directly into the athletic structure. And we've converted one of the flexible offices into the office that would support the athletic structure itself. So a transaction window, again, for ticket sales, information, those sorts of things. So it's a really nice phased approach if we wanted to look at it that way. The last 2 slides now, I think I already said last 2 slides, sorry, but there's 2 more. So this is just interior rendering. So we went through this exercise with concept 1 and 2 just to see a sense of volume and scale. So the images you see here, the image on the left is a view of the lobby. So that's the transaction window, seeing the 2 regular height transactions and then also a lower ADA transaction in the middle. Lots of natural daylight opportunity for this space. And the doors we're looking at here would be the east entrance. So those would be the entrances out here to the park. And then if we slide to the right, 2 more images again of just the meeting area and the open office view. Lastly, an exterior rendering. So tying in with the existing building, not making that really stick out as a difference to a new addition. So the thought of this would be not only adding on the new building, but heavy remodel of this existing building as far as an exterior material perspective would go. The materials that we have on the exterior of this building are very high maintenance materials. And so we would propose kind of reskinning the entire building on really low maintenance products that you would not have to constantly be repairing with the different season changes. So a really kind of refresh of the existing building and tying that into the new building. So that's the last slide.
Lindsay, thank you very much. So those are the 3 concepts as requested from the council that we have for you tonight. Andy Picard with High Tech is also here if you have any questions from a construction perspective. So really, I think what we're looking for from the council tonight is direction of how you'd like to proceed. You'll see in the packet, being that we did have multiple concepts. Staff does have a recommendation in the packet of concept 3. Our main reasoning for concept 3 is while new builds tend to have a longer lifespan than remodel, we'll give the opportunity to build around modern technologies and maybe be more expandable in the future. We do think that concept 3 does also serve us well as well. Pretty much has everything that the new builds have, allows us to be in 2 phases. I know one of the concerns, I think originally last year when we discussed remodel, was that factor of the concept remodel that we were looking at that time required the complete vacation of this building. This concept would not. In a construction phase, you'd start with the new wing first, allowing city operations to maintain. At some point, you would lose use of this building as this wall would become that connecting piece, at least this room for a little bit. Once that is done, staff would move over to the new wing, and then remodel would begin on this building. There's a period where we would lose access to this room, and so council meetings, pretty much any public meeting would have to be relocated for a period of probably just a few months during that period, but it's much less of a interruption than was originally planned in the original concept that was presented last summer. So that was, I think, one of the big things that enables this to be a much more tangible option as well. So with that, I guess we'll take, if you have any questions for us, otherwise we're just looking for direction from the city council on how you'd like to proceed.
Okay, does anybody want to kick us off?
Oh, and I guess I should just, it's in the packet, but just call out really quickly. I'll just go through the actual estimates. I mentioned the construction estimates in there, but I think I should just call them out. Concept 1, we're looking at a construction estimate of $3.9 million with just over $275,000 in design fees. That was pretty much as presented back in January. Redesign, if without, looking at $4.23 million. Without the gymnasium, with the gymnasium, it's about $6.03 million. Lindsay, did you have estimated design fees for concept 2?
Yeah.
Did not have those at the time of the packet, so I was just asking Lindsay if she.
Design fees?
Yeah,
For
for
option 2?
Yeah.
237,000.
230 for, and that was without, that's, okay, 237 for that one?
Correct.
Concept 2, okay. And then concept 3, the remodel and addition, that's about $2.5 million construction estimate and $4.25 million with the gymnasium, with about $242,000 in design fees. It would be $382,000 if the gym was attached, so an extra $140,000 for if the gym option was selected. So.
I have one question, Lindsay. Did Mike ever come to this building with your engineer and he had said he was going to do some minor demolition?
Yeah, so High Tech actually came to site, was it this week, Andy?
Last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Andy Pickard with High Tech Construction. I think it was last week, Dave, is that right?
Yeah, I think it was last
Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah. So last week, we had one of our carpenters stop in, take a look at the building. So we asked them to review the building envelope, the existing building this is. Building envelope on the exterior side, determine that there's a weather barrier behind the siding, right? Everything's interior or exterior perimeter walls have a interior vapor barrier, which it did. So attic space had a vapor barrier at the ceiling. Let's see, insulation in the attic, and then just any red flags, right? And we didn't see anything. So I mean, the vapor barriers are all present. Weather barriers is on the exterior walls. So it's, it was built in good construction manner. So yeah, everything checked out, everything we were looking at. So
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Thank you.
Which is kind of interesting in that for quite a bit of the discussions, there's been a lot of concern expressed about this existing building and what we might find. So I would like to think that maybe a little bit of that concern can be dispelled. And I want to just clarify, one of the options that I've kept bringing up that would be nice to have cost information on is just a remodel of the current building. I'm not seeing anywhere, and I just want to make sure that I'm seeing things correctly, in the concepts that are provided tonight, where it's specifically just the cost to remodel this the existing building. Is it correct that we don't have just that tonight?
So if we think back to when the facility assessment was originally conducted, we went through the building and identified low, medium, and high priority items, and we had costs associated with renovating this existing building and bringing it up to today's standard during the same time. And I believe that was around $900,000, if I remember correctly.
Shy of $1 million.
Yep, just out of $1 million. And so that was existing building, existing footprint. So when we do a facility assessment, we look at two components. So we're assessing the existing structure, and then we're also taking a look at square footage. So in addition to doing just the remodel for $900,000 is what we took, that was step one. Step two was to assess the square footage shortages. So we know that we're out of office space and we have no room for growth or flexibility. And so we look at in addition to this existing building, it was a very small scale, just adding some additional office space. And I think my notes are over in my bag. I would have to dig those out. But that was over $1 million to remodel the facility and then add on some additional square footage just with the existing structure. So it wasn't the addition necessarily to the north, but it was just increasing the footprint of this building. So we looked at both of those.
Yeah, and that's where, when building official Scott Sadusky came in, that's when his recommendation was not to actually try to physically increase the size of this building, because of its, even though, as Andy said, we don't have any rot or no signs of rot or mold in the building, to the way it was conducted, to now try to rip out walls and to expand, that would be, could be difficult. And so that's why we went with the expansion option. It's really kind of that hybrid of actually build a new wing and not actually touch the square footage of this existing building.
So again, though, among the options that we have, we don't have anything that gets specifically to just remodeling this building. And I guess I'm left to ask the question, why?
The council did not provide any direction to do that. Okay,
So I guess the ideas that I had, what I thought might be some viable options, weren't in fact taken into account. For some reason, I thought that made it into the motion that the council made at the time. Perhaps it didn't. It's too bad.
No, David did a good job of recapping, and I apologize if I start coughing. I'll be brief on that one, hopefully. When we had the workshop to talk about the four original options, the remodel / addition was kind of building to the south, building to the east, and that was kind of the option 2. And then option 3 was to build a new building without community room and library, and option 4 is to build with a community room and library. And so when we came to the next workshop, we discussed, and one of the big faults was if we remodel, we would have to vacate these for up to 18 months throughout the whole building. And while I believe many of us came in with the idea that remodel was going to be a viable solution, after hearing all the pros and cons from building new versus the remodel, we concluded that the new was the way to go forward with it. So at the next council meeting, it was actually a 3-2 vote, Paul, myself, and Mr. Scott, to continue with the design for a new city hall. I believe Mayor Zierden and Jensen were opposed at the time just due to the way that the motion was made, because it was including the Gorian and the high-tech process. And so we looked at the new, because that was the direction that the council gave at that point. We looked at it, we came back, we discussed at the January workshop, and that's when we concluded that we could look back at the new remodel with addition, and that's when Mr. Sadusky and Mike met and talked about the addition, that if we do the addition, we wouldn't have to vacate the premises, which was a big negative, in my view anyway, from why we're looking at the new. And so with this new concept, it allows us to get what we need for the administrative portions. Again, we are busting at the seams with staff. This was built in 1995 for a residence capacity of 900 residents. We're now over 2,800. We've grown our staff to provide services that residents are requesting. And so we need that office space. And I'll go on record that, one of my concerns with the remodel, with the original concept, was it was more of a Band-Aid solution for a 10, maybe 15-year outlook. Well, with this new addition that we're looking at, that office space will go 20, 25, 30 years into the future. And so, in my opinion, that's the better route to go, because we're continuing with just a single community room. We can still dual purpose it. We have enough office space to grow within the community here. And if it's a fitness room, it's a fitness room. It doesn't have to be a fitness room, but it does give us something additional that we can offer the community. We can kind of see where it goes with that. If that fails, we can always make it another small community room, meeting room. There's a lot of options with that. So I think, David, you did a great job of explaining the history of where we're at with it. And so I've got nothing more to add on that one.
Councilman Ball, do you have anything? Councilman Chadwick?
Well, I've pretty much stated, which option I've previously been before, and it's been 3. I think it's the best use of taxpayer dollars. It gives the city room for growth in the administrative side. And again, Lindsay, thank you, and Mike as well. I think you've provided good options that meet the needs of the city. Things can be added on. David and staff are behind it. And I think, looking at the agenda tonight, I've said it before. I mean, infrastructure is one of the primary jobs of the city council. We are now going to put out an RFP for the streets continuous improvement plan. Roads are expensive. You have gravel roads within the city with developed neighborhoods, and then also the minimum maintenance roads throughout the city, which planning and zoning will be dealing with, the smaller lots that are on 11 with the minimum maintenance roads. But I think we have other costs. We have surpluses. We can offset some of those costs to the taxpayers. I think the council has heard loud and clear. People do not want higher taxes. And that's, I think really all I have. I think option 3 without the gymnasium, to me, makes the most sense, and gives the city more flexibility with the costs that we are confronted with.
Thank you.
It's likely most people know what direction I'm going into, but I was asked if I've had time to reflect on, the various concepts, and I definitely have. I have looked at this a lot, and the pros and cons of each option, which have changed over time. Councilman Jensen, you mentioned best use of taxpayer dollars. I think concept 2 with the gymnasium at this time is the best use of taxpayer dollars in the city of Breezy Point. I realize not everyone will agree with that opinion, but there are some in this community who would agree with me. The city is in a good place financially to move forward with that option. It would give city staff the space that they need, the new technology they're looking for, and the residents of Breezy Point an added benefit. That is not just remodeling an existing building, adding more space. I have heard loud and clear the residents of Breezy Point. I am not trying to increase taxes for the residents of Breezy Point, but I am trying to look forward into the future in a growing community and provide amenities and features to them. I am not trying to hijack the remodel of the city hall. I am trying to give staff exactly what they need, the space they need, but also looking at what can we also provide to the residents when we are financially able to. I believe that concept 2 does provide better options. It has a workout room that is twice the size of the one that's proposed in concept 3, which in my opinion, wouldn't really function as a workout room for anyone other than staff. It has a better layout for future. It's been said that the remodel and addition would kind of create a Frankenstein effect for the building, and I agree with that, where you would have a gym potentially on this side, then the, city hall, and then the community center, and then, so everything's kind of hodgepodged around, and we would be stuck with that for years to come. That's not what I want for the city. We also talked about not having to vacate the building. We wouldn't have to do that with concept 2 either. So that is my thought on it.
Councilman Maroney, where do you stand on, what are your thoughts on the concepts? Where are you at?
Sure, I'm ready to make a motion to approve for design documents for concept 3.
With the gymnasium?
Not at this time.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I think at this point, it's probably pretty clear where I stand on the discussion at City Hall, and to me, what would seem to make sense moving forward. Unfortunately, I'm in the minority, and oftentimes the ideas that I have, things that I've been bringing up, fall on deaf ears. They don't go anywhere. I don't like any of the concepts or the options, and in large part because it's not that I don't have a mind for the future. I think we're all up here in some ways because we can think to the future. It's what this community needs now in anticipation of where we could be in 15 years. We don't know where we're going to be. We could be a community of another 500 people, or development may just all of a sudden stop. And are we realistically going to build a city hall for the future where we don't pragmatically know, in the true sense, what the future looks like? That's, to me, why it makes sense to look at, and only look at, remodel of this building. We hear needs, we hear more office space, we hear this and that, but in the time that I've been on the council, there's been no concrete information provided as to what is lacking in this building. And I certainly haven't heard that we haven't been able to provide certain services or respond to customer needs because City Hall is set up too inefficiently or what have you. So to me, that's where I think the best time is spent. Even if in fact it is to say, you know what? Maybe the cost is too significant, even as we think about it 10, 15 years down the road. I doubt if that's going to be the case. I mean, when I'm hearing, figures in excess of $4 million, and this community's been plenty taxed already over the last dozen years, that's a lot of money. And I just don't know that this community is right now in a situation where that amount of money is warranted. So those are my thoughts. I don't plan on voting in favor of any of the options.
Any other discussion on that? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion doesn't carry. Would, Councilman Maroney, would you, or Councilman Ball, would there be a compromise on the remodel plus the gymnasium and workout? I think that, since we kind of started this process, compromise has been a little bit difficult for us to kind of reach a conclusion. I mean, we've been kind of going at this now for a couple months since the new information about the inspection of the building, which was one of my original concerns, was what would we find opening up the walls. I think that when I look at the future of the city, I do absolutely see growth. It's happening. It shows with just the number of people moving here. I think that while we are, a new build, value-wise could speak to a better value long-term when I look at concept 3 with the gymnasium and the workout room at a price tag that was originally aligning with the new build. I do feel that that is a compromise that I, would be willing to make. So my question is that a compromise that either of you or Councilman Jensen would also be willing to make in order to move this forward?
No for me.
At this time, no, not a concept with the, to move forward with concept 3 with the alt add of the gymnasium. At this time, my feeling is to get what we need here from an office perspective. We've designed it so we know how that gymnasium can go and how it can be added. So should we choose to do it at a later time, we know where that's going to fit within the realm of it. We have future planned it. At this point, I'm only looking at that $2.5 million price tag for the remodel addition.
I feel like waiting, we're just going to pay more. I feel like we're delaying the inevitable. Growth is inevitable, change is inevitable. I know it's not easy, but I think that if we were to do anything, now would be the time to do it at a price point that would be lower for our taxpayers. So I would not be in favor of the 2.5 million concept 3. So I don't know if there is anything that we could do at this time that we could agree on as far as a concept that we would all agree on, or at least majority.
And there really is no such thing, let's just set the record straight, as a cheaper cost to the taxpayer. Because as we all sit here now, we've been all overtaxed over the last 12 years. So, I'm really getting tired of hearing, it won't increase taxes. We're not looking to overtax people. Well, come on. It's what's been essentially happening for the last 12 years.
I guess at this point, I'll make a motion to move on with a no. It's not going to pass, so it's time to move on.
Just are you tabling it, or are we just not doing anything with this current council?
What point is there? If there's no compromise, there's no further discussion, make the motion to move on. If a council member decides there's something new we need to discuss, or there's a change of opinion on which plan is best, at that point, it can be put on the agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, any other discussion?
And discussion-wise, I'm disheartened that this council moving forward with designing for a new building. 3 of us out of 5 voted for that. When it came time to saying that we need to come back to a redesign of the remodel and addition, that was voted 4-1. We did both items. We brought back, in my opinion, workable products. And now we're sitting here spending money that is doing absolutely no good for the community. And that is where this council is going right now.
Well, and I would just add to that, Mike, in part, it's what happens when projects are taken on and things are launched into without a plan. And I think all we need to do is look at any number of things that are in front of this council, what have been in front of the last council for several years, most of which don't have a plan. How are you supposed to know where you're going to get to and how you're going to get there if you don't have a plan? I think a lot of this, confusion and just uncertainty and not being able to arrive at the place that we all think would best serve the community, I truly believe is a result of just not having a plan.
Well, I think the city does have a plan, Brad, the comprehensive plan. The only problem is there's only been 2 things taken from it, the disc golf course and the community center. It's up to cities to follow those plans. Within the comprehensive plan, there is a requirement to provide an annual report to the residents and taxpayers and have a public hearing on it. I think with rewriting of the ordinances, Administrator Chansky has also mentioned that there may be updates to the comp plan, but as far as your reference to the plan, that's what the cities are supposed to be following, and, that needs to change, or we go to a strategic plan or whatever's appropriate.
Yeah, and my comments weren't in any way intended to mean that the city doesn't have a plan or hasn't planned. I'm getting at specific project plans. There's one thing to have a broad, comprehensive idea of where the community's at and where you want to be, how things are going to look in 20, 30 years. It's something else, in my mind, to actually have a plan, a project charter. We're taking on whatever the project is, right? Let's develop a plan. Let's establish some basic framework so that we're all moving forward and operating on as close to mutual understanding as possible. That's, to me, the thing that has been missing. Continues to be missing.
I just regret that it's being brought up and asked for now. This has been,
I have brought up the idea, not only with respects to City Hall, but with the disc golf for a plan. Oh, yes, I have to go back and listen to the meetings.
I would like to add that with regards to the last meeting about Landis, we are still doing due diligence, and we are still working on partnerships and private partnerships, public partnerships. There's been many, many, many residents who are not in this room who have reached out, who want to see the building, tour the building, look at that option. So as promised in the last meeting, I will continue to work on that and provide the residents of this community all the due diligence at the time that we complete it to potentially look at that as a potential option for our city that could actually be something that would be less cost to the city. So that is still on the table for me, and I will continue to work on that as an option.
Can I ask a question? As far as I know, the council had no conversation about Landis Gear. None.
We have a resident task force that we will, all us residents, work on.
So when did the city council agree to authorize a resident task force being established?
I'm not utilizing any city resources to do this.
It doesn't matter. You are acting in an official capacity outside of city council meetings as mayor, and that is inappropriate. None of us wear the title of elected official outside of these meetings. I think that's well documented in many places, not the least of which is the League of Minnesota Cities. I believe it's the same point that Steve was trying to make at the last meeting, or the special council meeting. We need to authorize and be behind and support as a council things that are being done outside of this meeting.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Anybody else have any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
So can I just ask a point of clarification?
No, we are
What was
going
that last
to move-
motion?
We're going to
So
move on.
That motion was to move forward, so we're not doing anything until a council member, until the time that a council member chooses to request it be on the agenda again.
So do we not have a motion to move forward with concept 3?
No,
That
No.
failed, that failed
Failed.
2-3.
no,
We're
that
not doing
failed.
anything.
That failed 2-3.
That failed till the 2 to 3.
I just made the motion that we're.
Thank you for whoever said idiot. Much appreciated. If you don't think I can hear that, I guess you're wrong. Wow.
So no further work will be conducted on City Hall.
Okay. So we will go ahead and move on. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's the consent agenda as amended.
As amended, yes.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the items removed. I believe 8E, disc golf naming contest.
Yeah, I wanted to just go on record that I think it's an extremely poor taste, among other things. We have, not even as a council, come close. I heard compromise earlier tonight. I've heard compromise a lot. And doing anything with compromise on the expansion of the disc golf. And here we have somehow an actual naming contest going on for the disc golf. I wouldn't mind a little bit of clarification as to how that happened, when the council authorized that.
So as part of the work that the council did hand to the Parks Committee in January, yes, the January council meeting, the list of, I think it was 12 directives plus then other discussion. As part of looking at the, this has been discussion they'd had previously as well, in looking at the rules for the disc golf, one of the things that kept coming up was always original, expansion, and they wanted to actually put names to the different courses. And that's where the committee discussed in well, I think it was originally, Assistant Administrator Eichhorn, was originally discussed in December or November.
They've been talking about it back and forth for about a half a year now. The motion was in
January was officially.
Yeah, it was when they officially did it. They originally brought up the current design in December. In January, they said, okay, Daniel, go ahead, start looking at it. And then we brought it back for the final stuff.
Yeah.
And
So in January, the Parks and Recreation Committee approved this contest to have the kids in the community submit names, recommended names for the two courses that the committee would then discuss. They planned on discussing that at their meeting next week, and then issue a recommendation to the council for the official naming.
How many submissions have we had so far?
we've had 6 total, I believe. There's been a couple families that have put stuff in, but each sheet has like multiple names on it, so it's more than that. But there's been like 6 actual
Yeah,
forms.
so each form, it's like course 1 and course 2. So you submit a name for each course. So there've been, yeah.
So there wasn't a need for us to make a recommendation authorizing or making a decision to authorize a naming contest, but we're going to be provided with recommendations of the chosen name? Is that what I'm understanding?
So the Parks Committee felt that under the main guidance that the council gave, this kind of felt under that.
Oh. Well, I guess I would disagree with that, which is why I wanted it pulled off the consent agenda.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve item 8E?
I'll make a motion to accept the donations.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Move on to 8B. Meeting minutes.
It is with absolute frustration that I'm even having to deal with the meeting record of February 20th, where a special city council meeting was called. But honestly, normally I would have something like this just fall off my shoulders, but the taxpayers are owed an explanation. My presence or lack thereof at the special council meeting was called into question. Don't know why it was, but it was by more than one member of this council. And I find that extremely odd, in part because I don't know it to be any one of the responsibilities to keep track of my whereabouts. But we have for months on end as a council talked about the need for workshop meetings. Sometimes of which we don't know exactly why, but we're scheduling workshop meetings. I have been a council member, along with others, who have occasionally expressed an inability to make a meeting during the day. We work. We've got lives. We've got other things going on. And I've especially mentioned the fact that it's difficult, not impossible, mind you, but difficult for me to make a meeting much before 5 o'clock. So in some people's mind, it might stand to reason, and I appreciate Councilmember Jensen for, I believe, trying to clarify that it wasn't me just making the decision to not come. It was me already having made comments sufficiently, months over months, about finding it difficult to make a 5 o'clock meeting. So that's what was behind why I wasn't at the special council meeting. I simply couldn't make it. If I was able to make it, I would have been there. I hope people understand that.
I'm sorry if that was the way that you interpreted it. Actually, the only reason that it was brought up was because it was brought up by a resident asking why we were having a meeting with 4 people. And so it was just an explanation that when we set a meeting or we can't tell that person or whoever to be there. So it was actually just a response to a member asking us why we were having the meeting with only 4. So it was not, any intention of, putting you down for not being here. It was just us answering the question that we can't control whether or not you come.
No, see, that's not going to work with me. You might be able to comment and kind of gloss over and smooth your way in an explanation like that with some people. But nowhere in your comments was it, I'm only saying this because a resident had a question. There was none of that. It was clearly intended. I think as a reasonable person would watch that part of the meeting, it was clearly intended to call me out, to call into question why I wasn't there. Totally, absolutely, utterly inappropriate. And all I would ask is next time, if you have a question, ask me to my face. I don't think I'm that hard of a person to get along with.
Okay, any other comments? Do I have a motion to approve item 8B?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we will go ahead and move on to new business. Mr. Chansky?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So tonight, we have before you for approval is a draft RFP, request for proposals, for the development of street CIP. So this was something that's been discussed over the last year. Funds were budgeted in the 2024 budget from the capital fund to have a streets capital improvement plan developed. Again, what the intention of this is to have an engineer, a consulting firm come in, review all of our streets. As you can see, the scope includes an in-depth conditions analysis of all the city's paved and gravel roads. We've had high levels, one of them done in the past. I think Widseth did a very high level, again, what they both called kind of windshield analysis. Widseth did one, and then also WSB did one. Really just kind of drove it, ranked the streets, but didn't actually get down and really look at, do soil borings, figure out with the condition of each street in its actual condition. So condition analysis of all the city's paved and gravel streets, identification of utilities in and around the right-of-way, propose a 20 to 30 year replacement improvement schedule with annual budget estimates for existing paved and gravel roads, and then also recommendations and budget estimates for improving minimum maintenance roads, and recommendation budget estimates for installation of streetlights, sidewalks, and trails along significant routes throughout the community. Again, this is having someone come in, develop this, so the city then has something, the council has something, and work a plan to work with. You're not necessarily saying that 20 to 30 year plan, you will implement it as it's given, but you then have something to work with. We know where all our streets are in the replacement schedule, which roads, based off of conditions analysis and all these other analysis, should be first. So it's not, I think some of the questions we've had even with Bushman is why Bushman, why now? And so part of this would be identifying which streets should be done when and why, giving us some budget estimates so that we know, okay, this is what the city is looking at, so we can financially plan in the future of how to maintain our roads. That recommendation budget estimates for improving minimum maintenance roads. Again, not necessarily saying we're going to do that, but it's been in discussion in this community what we're going to do about minimum maintenance roads for a very long time. And so again, giving the council the tools to make an informed decision of what do we want to do about minimum maintenance roads. Again, it could be 10, 20 years on the road still, but we at least have some information regarding those areas. And then also what we've heard over the last year, especially talking about Bushman, Comments about streetlights, discussions about sidewalks and trails, especially along significant routes. In my experience, the best times to do things like sidewalks, trails, streetlights is when the streets themselves are being done. So that's why we included that as also an element we like to see in the scope of recommendations and budget estimates for those things as well. In the RFP and also my memo, you can kind of see the timeline. If approved tonight, we would issue it. Our plan would be to issue it tomorrow. And then, or issue either tomorrow or Wednesday. Tomorrow is the election, so it might be Wednesday. Responses would be due at the beginning of April. We then review the responses. Intention would be to have a recommendation before the council at your May meeting. And then that way we could get that process going in May, so in spring, so they have most of the good year to be reviewing that, and hopefully, again, hopefully be able to have some kind of response back around budget time. Again, I'm not anticipating that the city would implement something immediately. I think it's a longer term discussion. Other things this is not a part of the RFP, but kind of step 2, once this is done, the council's had discussions on, do we want to continue our assessment policy, change our assessment policy, get away from assessments? To really have that discussion effectively, you need to know what we're talking about, money-wise, plan-wise. So this is why this is kind of that first step. So at this point, I'll take any questions the council might have about the RFP or the process, and then we're just looking for approval to issue the RFP.
When will we look at the assessment percentages as far as what that looks like for each taxpayer? Is that during this time, after we get the
So I
stack?
see that as kind of step 2. So
Okay.
after the report is issued, the streets plan is issued, again, kind of what you would end up with is a recommended, right now I'm hearing about 20 to 30 years, that's average, what I see with cities on street plans. Here's what it costs, here are the roads you need to do, here's what we estimate the budget will be, and then as part of next steps of discussing what does implementation look like, that's when we discuss the financing piece.
Okay,
Of how do you
perfect.
want to finance it, and that's a big part of that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, any other questions?
So does the city have any improvement standards for what's involved with improving a minimum maintenance road to a non-minimum maintenance road? Do we have any kind of a lighting plan for the city, street lighting plan? I'm asking, just wondering in the scope of services, what we anticipate receiving from potential interested companies. There seems to be a lot of very important information that's not included in there, at least as I would read it.
So,
No, not on streetlights, minimum maintenance roads. We haven't done one. I believe my road is the last one that's been upgraded, and that was 15 years ago when I was a worker at a neighboring city. So I don't know what process you guys went through then. I mean, I would imagine right now we'd take it a case-by-case situation with council, look at it. We did have a road standard, but that got altered probably 9 years ago to allow councils to tweak projects based on any number of factors.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, in my line of work, I deal with a lot of contracts, a lot of RFPs, a lot of solicitations. I would really question what kind of response we're going to get, how consistent of a response we're going to get from contractors when we don't have any specific information in there about, okay, so we are to build out a budget, among other things, of how to improve minimum maintenance roads based on what? I mean, I would think we would want to provide at least some sort of a standard or guideline or something for them to base their evaluation off of. Otherwise, I don't know what we're getting. So all that to say, I would frankly like, this to me is a perfect example of why the Finance and Personnel Committee probably had value to continue existing. Because that's where I would lean. I would lean towards having more conversations as a council, working through and vetting to make sure that what we're putting out there for a solicitation is going to actually yield us what the taxpayers are paying for.
So what would be your specific recommendation for the RFP, Brad? I mean, he's covered the, budget estimates for improving minimum maintenance roads, recommendation and budget estimates for installation of streetlights, sidewalks, trails. So what type of more detail are you looking for?
I mean, something that would go to what the city would want some of these roads to be improved for. I mean, there's all kinds of different standards that you can improve roads to. And I just think not having any reference at all in there, it leaves it wide open. One company might come in and throw you a number to do this analysis based upon a very minimal level of construction, minimum level of base, blacktop, wear surface. That's where I just think we could end up receiving a vast, wide level of response.
I think that's easily changed. I think actually it makes sense to be specific. Our minimum maintenance are not going to be a collector road. It'll be a standard. What do we want? Standard residential. What tonnage?
I apologize. I thought we did have a minimum standard for road.
We have,
It can be altered, but it's at least the set minimum, and it can be changed should we deem it. But isn't there a minimum that we have?
I would have to review the specific, what's on the books, because initially, yeah, we did. We had certain ditch, certain amount of shoulder. The crux of it, cost. I mean, when you go to minimum maintenance road, and then you're going to transition directly to blacktop, well, that's a scary situation to people that are assessed 100%. So then previous councils looked at, well, maybe we can transition to gravel, something that's easier to swallow. So hopefully, the road gets opened, people get on it. It makes, because assessments, people are scared. They might lead to tax forfeits, those sorts of things. We've looked at multiple different varieties, and it's just one of those tough discussions. I mean, the city, I think, has had similar discussions for 20 years about roads and how to do them, and they change, and we can change them again. I mean, if you guys want to specify, that's not a big deal. We can pull up the old stuff, share it, look at it, comment on it. See if it seems appropriate or find something better.
Would it be possible to migrate this discussion into our March workshop, and that way we can maybe pull that data for review to discuss?
I think that's a good idea. That way we're discussing it, we have the data, make a decision. That's my thoughts.
Councilwoman Ball, you have anything?
That's fine.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
Do we need a motion to make this a part of the
I'd
workshop?
appreciate that if you want to move
I'll
it to the workshop.
I'll make a motion to rediscuss the RFP and discuss our standards for what the road development should be looking like. Does that mean everything, Mr. Scott, of what we should be discussing?
At your next workshop.
At the next workshop, yes.
Do you want to just talk in general and scope of deliverables and
Just-
not specific?
Yeah,
one
that
item?
sounds good. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think we should be
Services
an
and
informed
deliverables, yeah.
consumer. I mean, if we're spending taxpayer money, it would only make sense that we are clear and understand exactly what we're putting out.
Okay, any other discussion? Did I
we have a second on that?
Yeah, did a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, move on to the police side-by-side purchase.
Thank you. Our current Polaris Ranger is a 2011. It has primarily been used as a rescue vehicle in areas that were inaccessible by squad cars. It is not equipped with emergency lights, and it has no climate control. I didn't know this before using side-by-sides, but the amount of heat that's generated from the engine that comes through the back of the cab into the driver's compartment it's kind of like driving a portable sauna. It's unbelievable. And then when you put these nice cool vests on, that kind of elevates it even more so. With a request of extra patrol on the disc golf course and other areas, if we're going to use the side-by-side for patrol duties, we need something with some climate control. It just would not work otherwise. I'm also recommending a four-door so we can transport extra first responders, extra medical equipment to crash scenes. A quote was obtained from the Power Lodge. The total is $49,382.77. This includes tracks, lighting, a Stokes basket, all the rescue equipment. And tracks are necessary because if we put our current tracks on the machine, it would void the warranty. So we have to get new tracks. So the city received $116,770.53 from the Minnesota 2023 Public Safety Aid. I would recommend using this funding to make the purchase. This was Minnesota state aid we received. I would also recommend the transfer of the current side-by-side to Public Works for continued city use. With that, the tracks would also go to Public Works. One other thing I've spoken with Joe about is we need a larger trailer for a larger side-by-side. They have one that would work for us, so we would be swapping trailers. So then the only purchase necessary would be the side-by-side. Any questions?
I don't have
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the 2024 Polaris Ranger.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We'll go on to the police department computer and monitor purchase.
So at the completion of the organizational assessment by Sheldon Cohen, he recommended dual monitors at each workstation for the officers. They will assist the officers in writing reports and aid in productivity, minimizing their time in the office. When an officer is writing a report on a burglary or some such case, there's a large amount of data that they have to look at, and having that dual monitor would assist them in their efficiencies in writing those reports. So a quote was obtained for $3,455 to purchase dual monitors for all the officers and a computer and dual monitors for the 7th officer, which would be needed as well. I also recommend using the 2023 Public Safety Aid for that purchase. Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
So yet again, aid, some level of state aid the city got that would
Yeah,
go to
so
cover that?
we received $116,770.53 for public safety.
Okay,
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute recess before we finish the end of it. we will go ahead and move on to Parks and Recs, the signage recommendation.
I tried to phrase it as clearly as I could without mapping. Essentially, direct traffic down Rainier. I think the committee made the decision because it's the most direct route with the least amount of homes on it. That's me trying to summarize their discussion, but that is the gist of it. And that's what they requested. I did, to put signs on County Road 11, that takes Crow Wing County authorization. So in writing, I have to present them something that you folks approve. And then it'll be up to them to, let me know if those signs can be in there right away. And then the city streets, if you authorize, I would have a sign essentially at every intersection that would lead you directly to the new parking lot from Rainier. It was a fairly long discussion. We looked at least half a dozen different options. It stuck through paved, coming from different angles, and all those options were the most direct ones. We could have had many more if we would have went more circuitous routes, but we tried to stick to it as simple as I could while giving options. So, and this was what they felt, and this is what it'd take for me to ask the county, and then from that point going forward, those are the approximate costs. Any questions?
And we'll also really quickly add, this was also included as part of the recommendations that the council adopted in January. Was there's multiple things about signage, but also included signage on the route, that the Parks Committee decided for directional. So.
Correct, and also the current route would be removed. That sign would be removed. That goes down Autumn. And brings you to the parking lot on Green Scene along with the small signs. So,
Any questions?
Well, I guess maybe it's more of a comment than a question. Again, kind of liking this a little bit to, the naming of this golf course expansion. Council has, to me, on multiple occasions, made a commitment to find compromise to address issues. And I'm wondering, in part, if we ever reach that point, how does this proposed signage get affected? Are we placing signage only to have to potentially remove it, that kind of thing? So I guess it's more of just a question I have that's been ongoing for at least a year. What is exactly to be going on with in the future with the disc golf course expansion?
I think that at the January meeting, the council voted 4-1 to move forward with recommendations that I presented forward. So at that time, that is the direction of the council to lead the Parks and Rec to complete their tasks. And that is where we're at.
I'll make a motion to submit a written sign request to Crow Wing County, and upon approval, purchase and install all the necessary signs.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, so we will move on to disabling comments for the YouTube. So I know that a lot of residents have requested data and facts and information in order to make decisions, and so I have listened to that, and I would like to share with you guys some facts. I spent about 4 hours actually making sure that I was coming tonight with facts. There's a little over 850 cities in the state of Minnesota. Less than half, or a little more than half, have less than 1,000 people. So looking at cities between 1,000 and 20,000 in population, we have about 297. 129 of those do not have a YouTube channel that they put their council meetings on YouTube. 70 of those 129 do not allow for comments. Those cities include Pequot, Baxter, Brainerd, Little Falls, Nisswa, Walker. So, in fact, there were only 34 cities that allowed for comments. And I think that in order to really facilitate meaningful conversations, I think that we need to look at where we're having issues. And I didn't necessarily want to provide this, but I did. Just the kind of transcript under each city, I have it in our packet that kind of states, who said this under what meeting. And unfortunately, out of every single city, almost 400 cities that I looked at, not a single one had the language and the disrespect that the city of Breezy Point had on its YouTube channel. I can't, it's almost embarrassing, I'll be honest, that someone would come and watch one of our YouTube videos and see some of the things that are said underneath of it. And I think that it's not about, it's not about the First Amendment, because if it was, why would almost every single city that had a YouTube channel disable comments? So I think, I'm not saying we disable it across all social media sites. I also don't expect that our staff has the time to moderate everything that goes on under that YouTube channel. So I'm asking that we fall in line with the rest of the cities in our area and around the state who have also disabled those comments. And I think that, again, when you look at it, I think that it would make sense for us to do that. So I will go ahead and open it up for any discussion on that for a decision.
So what's the concern with the comments on YouTube different than a myriad of comments that are out there on social media in general? Because to me, YouTube is more or less an extension of other social media platforms. So just kind of curious as to how you're looking at the comments on the city's YouTube page differently than multiple comments on other social media platforms. And in fact, I brought to the council in December a packet of information about various comments that you, Madam Mayor, were making on social media rather disrespectfully. And I'm becoming an elected official. And wait, the council did nothing with that.
I think there's a difference.
I need to understand and know how the questions and concerns that were brought to me by residents that I brought to the council are looked at and handled differently.
Yes.
The threads that we pulled from next door, I'm sorry, we're not from the city's official Nextdoor page. And unfortunately, if you read through some of the comments, as I did, it's clear, we're not even following our own city's communications policy. And if we cannot do that, if we do not have the time or staff to do that, then we should be disabling those comments.
Which is precisely the reason why I brought forward the concerns as I did to the council in January or in December.
What happens in your own personal social media is different, right? So if you're on your social media, you are making your own comments under your name. This is different. This is a city official page, which again falls in line with the vast majority of states or cities in this state. So it's not just that, we're doing something that other states or cities are not. This is actually, we're doing something that other cities have said, we don't want that on our page for various reasons. So there is very much a difference in what you say in your own personal social media versus what is done on our actual city page.
Well, then I think residents are thoroughly confused because for most, they read on Nextdoor, Mayor Angel Zierden. So is that official sanctioned social media or is that private, personal?
There is no official mayor Zierden page on Nextdoor. They only allow for personal pages. And I actually disabled mine because honestly, it was a little too much. So I'm not even on there anymore. So at the end of the day, though, that is a personal page, and this is this official city site. So.
I'd like to read an email that the council received from a resident. I did ask the resident's permission to read it to the council. It's from Jonathan Curtin on Green Scene Drive. It says, "Council, I am writing to express my opposition to the proposal of disabling comments on recorded materials for the city's YouTube account. As you have previously acknowledged, communication is a problem for the city, and disabling comments will only worsen the situation. I strongly urge you to take criticism from residents seriously and address their concerns transparently and honestly. Censorship will only lead to further division and mistrust." We have struggled with communication. I do not support disabling it. I think the comments on that are not as such that they can't be quickly scanned, and I do not feel that we should disable the comments.
I actually thought about reading that as well, because one of the things that was said was that, I've heard this a lot actually, that, well, you ran for office, so you should take the criticism, or you ran for office, so you should just handle whatever is said about you. And I think, there is a level of, we do run for office and we open ourselves up for a lot of criticism, and I can take criticism. But I want to read to you a couple of things on there. And I want to know, would you consider this criticism? And it's almost that it doesn't matter what I do in a meeting. I can talk, I can not talk, I can laugh, and it doesn't matter what it is. So the first one, I was so glad that I watched till the end. I was able to listen to Angel come unhinged. So funny, her voice gets more shrill and louder with each sentence. So she finally closed the meeting because she's like, this isn't fair. I can't wait till she runs for governor to watch clips of her losing her cool with that shrill voice of hers, not allowing anyone to talk unless they agree with her. She could be a real hit on TikTok. The next one, nice to have the mayor not monopolizing the conversation. The next one, psycho. The next one, the laughing is irritating. This is serious. She giggles like a little schoolgirl and is on her phone during a meeting. How professional can you get? Honestly, I just can't, this is not criticism, guys. This is bullying, and this is mean, and this is trolling. This is not criticism. So I feel that in order to provide our viewers, we have a lot of people who watch our meetings, over 700 on two of our meetings. I do feel that, like other cities have done, to provide that environment on a city page, that we should do what the other cities are doing, which is disable the comments. Because clearly they are not producing good conversation. They are not sticking to topic. It is bullying, it is mean. And yes, I signed up for the job, but I still would like to see us treat each other nicer. So.
And there are other avenues to send us comments, and I know there is an email box, that there is a separate email that gets sent to each of us individually. There's more official ways to send people messages than through a YouTube string. I don't think that's I don't even know if you can tag people, but I'm guessing that person on city council is not gonna get that message unless they're going out and reading through the comments all the time. So Councilman Jensen, I understand your point, but I just don't think that's the best way to voice your concerns to a city council member is through a string on a YouTube site.
I just don't feel they should be disabled. I think the distrust in the community is bad enough as it is. I think, to be perfectly honest, I never even read YouTube comments. I can barely keep up watching the Parks and Recs, planning and zoning videos. When I go to look, I just watch the video if I have questions about the council meetings. But if a resident is going to sit through a 5-hour meeting, they want to make and watch it, make a comment, they can make a comment. And to staff's point, if you're going to target one thing for removing comments, then the whole, everything else has to follow suit.
And I don't have an issue, I don't think we have an issue with any of the other sites. So if you want to turn off the comments to those two, I guess it doesn't matter to me. I just
you
don't
can
think,
single out.
I mean, if the staff can say that they're going to be able to go out and police it appropriately, then fine, leave them open. But otherwise.
But we're the minority, right? I mean, we're the minority. All the other cities, including Pequot and Nisswa, this is not me just saying, oh, Breezy, disable their comments because I don't like what's being said about me. Honestly, I don't really care at this point what's being said about me. I just think that it's a little embarrassing that you're going to come and watch a council meeting on YouTube, and these are the things that you're reading below. I don't think it sets a good tone for our city. I think that it's been actually very divisive, and to continue to allow these things to happen on an official city page on YouTube when other cities are not, I don't feel like that's appropriate thing to do. I think that we need to do what, and again, there's stuff said about I think every single one of us on the YouTube channel. So it's not just me. There's not nice things said about you and you. I mean, but why are we going to foster that under that city page and then expect staff to police it? I don't feel like that is what we should be doing moving forward. And again, Brainerd, Baxter, Little Falls, Pequot, Nisswa, I mean, these are all cities that do this, so we're not just this unique community that's just disabling their comments. This is something that all of our communities are doing to foster more of a peaceful atmosphere when we are trying to watch our city council meetings.
Question for staff is, does staff get notified when any comments are made on our public YouTube channels?
Yep.
My biggest concern would probably be if there's disinformation, and I'd have to go back through the social media policy. If somebody comments about something that's not true, do we redact, or I don't even want to combat, because you'll never combat misinformation, but do those posts get removed if there's misinformation?
No.
That's my concern. If somebody wants to say, I don't like the color of green that he's wearing today, whatever.
So, I guess I'll start, and Assistant Minister, I can get into any nitty-gritty details. So as he said, yes, we do get notified. He's kind of our webmaster, is the main one that does get notified. So we actually do actively review from trainings that we have received and looking at court cases and such. Part of the thing is that what we've heard time and time again from Minnesota courts, the United States Supreme Court, is calling someone stupid, shrill, ugly, is not necessarily censorship worthy. Unless there's actual violence called for. Violence in here talks about obscene, false, or unlawful material. Talks about statements and threats or calls for violence or attacks of sexual assault or sexual exploitation. Those are things we're looking for. We're looking for calls of violence. If there's not, people are allowed to have their opinion. That's what we've seen, that we've heard from the Supreme Court time and time again. There are actually 2 court cases between the Supreme Court right now about social media use. One about public officials and personal pages, actually. And then another one that was just argued last week regarding actual, not again about cities, but the social media platforms themselves and whether they're even eligible to censor material. So that is why, from a staff's perspective, we are very hesitant to go down this route. And that's why one thing we've also seen from the court, especially the United States Supreme Court, again and again, when it comes to public expressions, is with government entities, it's an all or nothing. And that is why we recommended that if the council does choose to go down this path, it be all the city's public forums. So our YouTube, our Facebook, and our Nextdoor. I do want to clarify those are our pages. So those are pages that would have those comments turned off. We are not looking at private posts. We're not looking at what other people are posting on their private pages. It is purely the city's YouTube page, the city's Facebook page, and the city's Nextdoor page.
Right. But what about the other cities, though, that have just disabled on their YouTube because that seems to be
cannot speak for what
No, and
they
I'm just
do.
saying that is the common practice that other cities have done, just for the fact that, so there isn't that gray area of misinformation, other things, because there's absolutely misinformation in here, things that are being said about what we're saying that are not true, which then the public is taking and they're thinking that's what is being said and it's not. And that hurts what we're trying to do up here. It does. And so by disabling the comments in YouTube, just like these other cities, there's other areas. If they want to voice their opinion on other social media platforms, but go ahead, right? That's their own, they're able to do that. It's just, we would be falling in line with all the other cities that have done it.
Which doesn't mean that we should do that very thing of fall in line. I spent 12 years in the United States military, and I like to think in part because, it's about fighting for and preserving individual liberties and rights. I in no way am in favor of turning off comments, whether it's on YouTube or any other social media platform. Those platforms are owned and paid for by taxpayers. To take away people's rights to share opinions, make comment, whether we like them or not, that's their right. And I don't feel as though it's in any one of our rights to take that away. Certainly not unless and until, and I don't know, has the city attorney weighed in on this at all?
At this point, no.
To me, it feels like an extremely important thing to have done or to do. You can gloss over First Amendment rights all you want. I would hate for this city to be slapped with a lawsuit.
I just don't see that being the overall, again, this is every other city in the area. So I think it's important. People just go read what's being said under each of the videos. It's not something to be proud of. I will say that. And I did look at every single other city in this state of Minnesota, and there's not a single city that has the garbage that we have on there. It's embarrassing. In my opinion, it's embarrassing for us.
Consider the embarrassment as an elected official when you've got your mayor spouting off to residents, demeaning them, bullying them, calling them out. Imagine the shame and the embarrassment that I've had sitting on this council. And it's hard for you to ignore that, Madam Mayor. Yeah, you have engaged in that very rhetoric.
Going back to the topic here of staff time, is there a lot of staff time being utilized of reviewing these? Is it minimal?
No, I do it every morning.
Minimally?
Yeah, takes me maybe an hour maximum.
Just on the YouTube videos?
On everything, on all of the comments across all platforms.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
At this point, without having, my biggest thing would be is if there's misinformation of, if we acted on this way and somebody says, well, they did this and it's misinformation, that would be a problem in my book, because if anybody goes to read the comments, I actually never have read the comments until this. So at this point, if there's no threats, if there's nothing, if somebody wants to vent and act that way, let them.
And then we'll just add, there have been times that people have asked genuine actually questions in there those are essentially, that's the one time we will engage. If someone is asking a specific question about a procedure, about an agenda, about something specific related to a post, we will respond to that.
That does not happen on YouTube, just letting you know. That's only been on other social
Never
media.
been a specific question.
There hasn't been a specific question asked on YouTube. Usually
Yeah,
it's just
no.
people commenting, and I review them, and I haven't seen a reason to remove any of them.
Okay.
Yeah. I would almost encourage us to change the subject heading, if there's a actual city legitimate question, contact staff here.
Well, and I think the city of Edina has in their policy that if it's not related to the topic at hand, it is removed. So there are other cities that have more than just that paragraph to say, okay, well, if we're gonna actually foster meaningful conversations, then we are going to make sure that the people that are commenting on those are commenting on the actual topics and not on the person themselves.
Well, and if we haven't spoken with the attorney about it, maybe we should, just so we get that actual idea of like what is permitted to be removed and what is not. Because I've gotten from you that there's some case law, but then apparently cities are doing it differently everywhere, so what is okay and what is not? I would like to know that.
Okay.
So at this time, I'll make a motion to leave YouTube comments going and,
That is our policy, so you don't really need a
Okay.
motion to that. The
All right.
policy says people will be allowed to comment.
okay.
All right, we'll move on to the disc golf expansion.
Yeah, I'd requested this to be on the council tonight. As we know as a council, but members of the community may not know, this council, the current seated council, made a decision roughly a year ago to move forward with the disc golf course expansion on 40 acres of property, essentially right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And from that time up until arguably just sometime after the first of this year, residents had shared concerns, repeated concerns, before the golf course even opened, mind you, of, drinking on the property and smoking and basically, the range of conduct that if you're a family with small kids in particular, you'd be a little concerned with. Other than, signs being installed and residents being told to call the police when they're experiencing issues, now that the problems are being realized, there's multiple photos documenting alcoholic drinks being consumed on the property. There's firsthand eyewitness accounts seeing people smoking. We got cars speeding through this residential area on their way to get to the disc golf course. Residents have asked for things like, what is it going to cost to maintain this? The disc golf club has made comments about, this is a revenue generating proposition. We're going to charge fees and the city's going to be making all this additional revenue. Well, where's the information? I think as a council, we have an obligation and responsibility to make sure that information residents are asking for is provided. And the best of my understanding that hasn't happened yet. Just as recently as January council meeting, we had Councilmember Jensen and Maroney who gave of their time to work on a plan, a compromise. Compromise has been one of these words used very liberally about, we know there's issues, we need to find compromise. We're going to work to a solution. And yet, at the very point at the January meeting where we had two council members working towards some kind of a compromise, what have you, we couldn't get there. As a council, we couldn't get there. And so that is largely the reason why I wanted it on the council agenda tonight, is to say, where are we at? What are people's thoughts when it comes to compromise? We need to address these issues. For any one of us to sit up here and think as an elected official after hearing time after time, not just speculation that there's drinking going on, but in fact, evidence of it, not just, we wish people wouldn't smoke, but actually proof of it happening. If we do nothing, that's ignoring direct notice that we have of violations of current city ordinance and policy we are doing nothing about. And I don't know about the rest of you, that doesn't sit well with me. We have an obligation and a responsibility to all taxpayers of this community. And to the extent that we're continuing to hear of issues, oddly enough, we've had a very unusual winter. And so the disc golf activity has gone right through most of the winter season.
I guess my question, Brad, would be what additional things would you propose or like to see on the table for discussion?
Well, I think everyone clearly knows at this time where my thoughts are and have been consistently on the disc golf. It doesn't belong there. In fact, I would continue to go so far as to say it's illegally there. The city can't just by wave of a wand or of someone's finger say, we're going to take property specifically dedicated to the general public for open space and say, now we're going to convert that into a park. But I'm not going down there. My intent tonight was to get this back in front of us collectively as a council to say, what are we going to do to address the issues? Because clearly what is being done is not working. And I don't have specific thoughts, Steve, on solutions, because I was never someone who was on board supporting this to begin with. So it's awfully difficult for me to sit here, short of saying I'll make a motion to completely remove the expansion of the disc golf, knowing full well it's likely not going to go anywhere. That is the only action in my mind tonight that would make sense. But recognizing that that's likely not going to go anywhere, we need to figure out how to address the issues, because the issues are clearly not going away.
So is it something you'd like to see on a workshop to discuss what's been done, what commitments the police department has made with extra patrols, and have further discussion? Is that what you're looking for or would work?
I don't know that is what I'm looking for, Steve, nor do I think what will work. I mean, how many meetings have we as a council heard from residents? How many months, over months, have we continued to recognize and hear that there are issues? There are problems. Our residents, our taxpayers are experiencing.
I don't disagree. If you remember, I had concerns when we first had the event permit because we truly don't know what the traffic on the expansion course is going to be when summer hits, because it was September. I have fears that it is going to be very high and it's going to be hard to police, and there will be issues, and especially specifically to the residents that abut the property. But unfortunately, until we have a full season, Michael did make suggestions. Chief Sandell is committed to extra patrols, but I have the same concerns that there is going to be a lot of problems this summer.
I mean, you could say, you know, without too much of a stretch, we've already in so much as had sort of the first summer activity there, and kind of a continuation of that just with the winter we're having.
Yeah.
I mean, face it.
But I
there's
think
been
it's
no
going to
snow.
be
There's been
substantial traffic, even more so than what there's been.
right, which is exactly the reason to me why we need to, as a council, put our heads together and figure out how we're going to start to address some of these issues. Because no disrespect to the police department or public works or other staff who have been involved with this trying to help, right? Unfortunately, as anticipated to no avail, none of that's working. And so I would have to think that for those who have supported the existence of the disc golf course, you may have some ideas on how we can start to resolve some of the issues.
I don't think we're going to do that tonight. So I think that we will go ahead and move on to,
I think it should be a workshop item,
okay.
future
So
workshop.
let's go ahead and move on to the old business.
So does that mean I'm going to have to continue to have this on the council meeting month after month? Because I'll be more than glad to do that. If that's what I'm understanding, where things are going to be, then
I think Councilman Jensen just asked for it to be placed on a workshop.
I asked
so
for it
we
to be
could
placed on a workshop.
Discuss it there.
I think it's an appropriate discussion item.
well, again, I would tend to disagree. I mean, in part because, again, these workshops are held during the day, are held when a good share of the public can't attend. It just doesn't feel right, but.
All right, so we will go ahead and move on to the old business.
No, we have nothing under old business, Madam Mayor.
Okay, staff reports?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just a few things quickly. First, Public Works Supervisor Zierden has been diligently working with Widseth on finalizing the sewer study. I know he and Assistant Public Works Supervisor Carlson are reviewing a draft. I'm hoping to get to dig through that myself as well in the coming days once we get through this election. So they're doing that. And then they'll get their comments back to WIDSEF, and then hopefully we'll have a final draft before you in the coming weeks. Just a couple things that have already kind of been talked about a little bit. So the food drive for Food Share Month, we are doing that, staff will be doing that through March. So as we did back in December, members of the public are free to bring in food they'd like to donate to the food shelf. Here to City Hall, we'll take that periodically over to the food shelf. I know Assistant Administrator Ike will be getting some information out about that later this week as well. The March edition of the Breezy Beef will be published this week. And then tomorrow, as a reminder to all, is the presidential nomination primary. So polls will open sharply at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning and close at 8 p.m. So residents of Breezy Point who wish to cast their vote and the presidential nominating primary may do so here at City Hall from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We do remind anyone, if anyone does have an outstanding absentee ballot they haven't returned, please do that at the Crow Wing County Elections Office in Brainerd. And the last thing, we're just going to kindly ask for once the meeting concludes, if everyone can, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We do need to take this room down and set up for the election tomorrow morning, so we can get that right up and going tomorrow morning. So that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Anything else from the council? Agenda forecast?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So we just had for a proposed March workshop. We're not moving forward with City Hall. Obviously, City Hall financing discussion does not need to be had. But we did make a motion to discuss road standards and such as part of the CIP. And so that would probably take that space. You'll see in the workshop draft agenda, the date and time is listed as to be determined. Councilmember Scott also requested the opportunity to discuss that and tonight. Just so you're aware, for the doodle poll that did go out, couple dates listed for the week of March 18th. I will just say 3 members of the council responded. The only date that worked for everyone on that poll was March 21st from 5 to 7. So I'll just give that out there. But if there's anything other comments you'd like to see, things you'd like to see discussed at a workshop, or any questions about a workshop, otherwise we would be looking for a date and time for a workshop.
I will be gone that week, but can I call in?
If we have your location, including address ahead of time,
I can do that.
then that would be, we need at least 3 days ahead of time.
And so part of the reason why I asked for this to be discussed with the council is for this very reason. There's just far too much misunderstanding and confusion that gets created when we're not doing things in person as far as scheduling a meeting goes. The 21st, you said? Was the response?
For the poll that I sent out, right now it's the March 21st. Was the one date that worked for council members Ball, Maroney, and Jensen.
And I'm unfortunately out of town at meetings both the 20th and 21st.
It doesn't have to be that week. That was just the third week. Normally we've targeted the third week only because first week generally has been council. Second week is then you generally have planning commission and parks. And then that would always give us kind of a week before the packet went out in case there's anything like, for example, this time, if we're going to discuss the CIP, it would give us time to implement any changes ahead of the April meeting. So that's generally why we kind of targeted the third week. It doesn't have to be the third week.
I guess my ask would be that David sends these out several weeks in advance, and if there is conflicts, let him know so that he can propose alternate dates for the workshop. I have not received any email stating there were any conflicts. I get it, people are busy, there's work things, but this, in my opinion, could have been resolved by providing David, no, those dates don't work, and he could propose alternate dates and see if we could determine, is there a time we can meet?
So the 18th sounds like it works for 4 out of 5 of us. Is that a correct statement?
The 21st.
And I'm recorrecting it to the 18th?
The 18th works for Councilmember Jensen.
Okay, I apologize. 19th?
That also listed as only Councilmember Jensen. For
Okay.
the 3 that responded, it was just Councilmember Jensen.
So do we want to send another poll out for the week of the 25th to see what would work for the most of us?
The 19th is open for me.
Councilmembers Ball and Maroney said that didn't work for you too. It also doesn't have to be 5. That was just the time you've met in the past. It could be 7, it could be 6, it could be 8.
Well, I'd say since hearing with what we have going on is if the week of the 18th doesn't work, it sounds like that's our reply back, that we don't have it. Why don't you send another one for the week of the 25th and see what works?
Yeah, I would just try for the next week. I mean, is that spring break week?
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's,
Yep.
yeah.
We could also forego a March workshop.
Sounds good. In fact, I'll make that a motion.
I'll second that.
I'll third that.
So we got a motion from Scott, seconded by Maroney for no March workshop.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.